much for joining. This is another series of CVIR for an interesting article. And we have an article on unicameral bone cysts and the treatment of pediatric population. There's no true treatment consensus on unicameral bone cysts yet. We don't have that, do we?
No, unfortunately, there isn't a true consensus. And, there are multiple situations where there are cysts that are just followed along because of the relatively high recurrence rate that's associated with them. So an orthopedic surgeon doesn't necessarily want to operate because there is a relatively high recurrence rate. There's also morbidity associated with this procedure. And so
when you say high recurrence, how high can this be?
In the orthopedic literature, it's as high as 30% has been reported out there.
IRs would offer catheterization with sclerosants and various injections. What's happening with these treatments? Are they effective? Are they going to disadvantages?
So, a lot of the data from the IR world in terms of sclerosis has to do with aneurysmal bone cysts, right? So that's a little different from the unicameral, which is a single cyst, aneurysmal or the multiple cysts. And that tends to be what's offered to most children with aneurysmal bone cysts. And so what we started doing was extrapolating that concept to unicameral bone cysts because it's the same concept as a cyst. We inject a sclerosant in there to burn the wall lining. As IRs, we're very comfortable doing that because we burn cysts elsewhere in the body, right? We do lymphatic malformations, we do splenic cysts, renal cysts, hepatic cysts, right? So it's the same kind of concept to us, is that it's a cyst within the bone. So let's go in there and sclerose it or, cauterize it.
What was the main symptom? How did these kids appear? Who picked up these cysts? How did they find out?
So it was primarily coming to us, exclusively came to us from orthopedic surgery. Some of these kids, I would say about a third of them had fractures, had prior fractures, and you get an x-ray, and then you see a pathologic lesion there. The other was pain associated with it. I'd say about 30-40% or so was pain. And sometimes it's just incidentally, a child may have knee pain, for example, they get an x-ray, and then they see a cyst right in the femoral neck, which is kind of remote from where they had the knee pain.
The synthetic graft that you injected, how did you manage to calculate the exact amount?
Why we started grafting it, right, is the orthopedic surgeons love seeing graft because the bone, which was previously loose and filled with a cyst, is filled with this material. The way I think of graft is it's just a scaffold, right? It's different from cement, which is there permanently. This is just a scaffold. It tells the body, come build bone, and then it's gone away in a few months. So it is perfect for a growing child.
Why would you use more than one needle?
So I think this is kind of the imperative part about this whole technique is if you have a single needle into a cyst and you inject contrast, it is a pressurized system, and you will then see contrast egress via medullary veins into systemic veins. So you can imagine that if you pressurize it and you're injecting graft, you could potentially egress graft via medullary veins into the systemic system, which would then obviously get it into the pulmonary tree. So by having two needles, it's a venting system. So if it ever becomes pressurized, it can egress via that second needle.
As expected, did you have good outcomes from your study? Did you have any recurrences? How much did you follow up your patients for?
Our data was much more promising than we actually expected it to be. And so our recurrence rate now on average is at around 15%. When we published a study with you, I think it was about a year and a half or so ago, at that juncture, we had done about 20 patients and about 14 patients were in the study, but now we're up to like 45 patients. So even as we have more and more data points, it's still panning out in that our recurrence rate is around 15%. Obviously, it's a much less morbid surgery than open surgery. The whole procedure time takes me about 45 minutes, and that's from the point of them going to sleep to them waking up. And a lot of that is 20 minutes of us sitting around as a sclerosant is sitting within the lesion. So it's a very straightforward procedure to do.
That is fantastic. Truly minimally invasive solution for a very sensitive population. Excellent outcomes. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with CVIR. This is fantastic. And we're actually looking forward to receive your update, case series now that your cases have actually increased and your follow-up is longer.